Hello. Before I start talking, welcome everybody. And I just need to say a couple of things. The day after I took that to the publishers, that book that I've got there, I had a very serious aneurysm. And so I talked a little slower than I used to. I went down to Glasgow scale 3. At 2 you're dead. At 1 you're decomposing. But I came down to Glasgow coma scale 3 6 times. And people don't believe in prayer. It was certainly waves of love. Anyway, we'll see about that later. Yes, I've been. I had no body, and that's a very interesting thing when you've got no body. And I was floating around without a body for a bit, and that was very interesting. But anyway, that's another story. But it does mean, yeah, we need to turn off some lights. Thanks.
The table lamp will be handy if you want to put that back on. How about that?
Okay, that'll do it.
You sure?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's fine. I call it tuning to the quantum field. And actually I realise now that you have to tune to the quantum field because the awareness of a human being transcends the quantum field. But so I call it tuning to the quantum field, geomancy, contemplation and intention. And on we go. So geomancy, Gaia, Earth, Mantis, prophecy, talking on behalf of, talking about Gaia and this quantum field that we live in. And here are some themes of the reflections that will be coming and the images that you'll be seeing. The one and the many. We all know about that. Profusion on every scale, elemental forces on all scales, cycles on all scales, attraction, circulation, mutation, the three laws of what we call trialectics. It's not dialectics, trialectics. Things are attracted, things circulate and mutate. And then process and multiplication, these are phase states of the quantum field. Okay. Well, that's our local galaxy, our quantum field home. We're somewhere on the edge of this. On we go. And this is our local boss who looks after us all and brings us our light and heat. And that's an image that shows what happens. Of course, I used to do stained glass windows and as a designer, and it was very interesting that if you put all the colours together on a picture, you get black in the middle. If you do it with lights coming through stained glass, you get white in the middle. The colours do a different thing. And as a stained glass designer, I was interested in the fact that the reflected light comes to black. Radiant light comes to white. Okay. This was in Canada. There was, northern lights going on in Canada when I was there, and amazing. One of the phase states of the quantum field, where the our magnetic field and the sun's light and certain conditions, you get this sort of stuff going on. And of course that one, and that's a phase state. It's an electrical planet. You know the things about, they've studied and they show pictures of the planet at night from outside in space, and it turns out there's lightning all the time going on this planet, everywhere. And once I had a bolt of lightning go through me. Okay. The meander of water, the curves. I've been doing books about sacred geometry. Now I'm interested in the waveforms. So that meandering river there with the oxbow lakes and stuff. Okay. And this is a waveform, the movement of the waves. Now, when I was years ago, I was working for the nephew of the Shah of Iran in the days when the Shah was still in power. And I met a guy who became an acupuncturist, but before that, he had helped to develop lasers. And suddenly he found that all his work was taken by the American government, all his patents, and given to Westinghouse. That's what happens, of course, the military-industrial complex. But and so he went back into his own tradition. He was a Chinese man and became an acupuncturist, and was a very eminent acupuncturist. And he said various things that might be of use for this gathering. He said, if you want to dowse time, it's a flow. And if you have your hands like that, just basic like that, if you can dowse with your hands, because you can always dowse right in the center of the hands. You can dowse from there. And because there's a point in the middle which has all the energy from the hara, you can in the center of that hand. And you get the flow that way. And he said, dowsing space, which is possibilities. You can dowse possibilities, future possibilities, with your hands that way. So that's a piece of information that I got from this guy. And he showed me, and he was talking about standing waves. And we were on near Virginia in one of the on the river, and he was pointing at the way that all the water was going round the rock, but there were standing waves. And he says, it's a standing wave. The water is going through it fast, but the standing wave tells you about the waves that are going through the land, actually. And he looks at the hill over, and he says, actually, it's a very slow movement, but that is a standing wave, that hill. And that's, anyway, that was part of, it's just something he said. Okay, this is entanglement. This is the Rose Cross. I was initiated in the Rose Cross, but the point here is that it's entangled. this universe is entangled. Now they've discovered that scientifically, that the entanglement of things, and that's kind of, well, I can't remember what it's called, that kind of work, Celtic. But of course in the middle is the heart, and of course we all know about the thorns. That's what happens in life. Okay, so the rose cross, anyway. This is a 7-point, and it's actually water going down a plug hole. It's a flow form going down a plug hole. And of course there it is. And you can see some of the standing waves down here. And even though the water's flowing through, just like the chi, the energy of the universe is flowing through things, but it has standing waves, which become planets and everything. Anyway, so, and this was in Iona, in Scotland. I was up there years ago, and I climbed up this little, it's not a mountain, a little hill called Dunny in Iona, and I just arrived on the ferry. I climbed up this place, and I lay down and had a little sleep for a couple of hours. And I learned later I was sleeping beside this pool, and it's called the Pool of Eternal Youth. Who knows? Anyway, but, okay, sacred geometry is embedded everywhere. All the movements of the sky and everything. And the next one, and all the water, and there's, you can see the flow forms in the rocks themselves. When that rock was formed, there were flow forms inside it. And of course, this is one of the quantum field phases, and there are various kinds of fire. Of course, this is a wood fire, just a basic sort of fire. Okay. And when you look at into the wood, you can see the flow forms going in there too. Quantum field effects, always. And this was just outside our house in autumn, when we were living well, we still live in Tilford, it was in another house. And that was the azaleas, the springtime. This is a phase state. This is phosphorescence coming up from the bottom of the sea. Phosphorescence. And I don't know, a guy called Lyle Watson. Yes, you heard of one. He was once in the sea, in a boat, and suddenly a light came from the bottom of the sea, and it was surrounding the boat. And various effects that come, that maybe phosphorescent, though he talked about it as a really golden light around the boat. Anyway. Phase state, of course. This is ice. Okay, so then inside. which is a fresh perspective upon data. And so I put a picture of Leonardo in there, and the spiral of the galaxy, and the spiral of the Route 5 spiral, which is one of the heroes of my books. But I just put this together out of my work. Now, the I Ching. This was designed for actually for a mirror, engraved mirror, all the transitions and the entanglements of the Tao, the way it is, the Tao, the Book of Changes, and really. There's an old saying in the Sufi tradition, seek knowledge first in China. Well, the Chinese knew a thing or two, and they got all the changes. They figured out the movement of all the changes. It was said that the basis of it was seen on the back of a turtle when somebody was by the river. But I don't know. I mean, that's the legend anyway. Fusi. This is the Indian version of creation, the Sri Yantra. It's actually a female form. It's the reflection of the ultimate, whatever, as a female form. It's called the Sri Yantra, which means the holy yantra kind of thing, and it is the fundamental of the whole of the Indian tradition. Now this is about dreaming the true dream and the healing dream. Asclepius and his daughters used to visit people who were in the avatar, and they would dream. The whole idea was that they would go on the island and they would have the healing dream. And Nora was saying that she thinks there's a stadium there that maybe lots of people got sort of nearly killed when they're in the stadium, you know, the chariot races and stuff. I don't know that. But having had this strange experience of being nearly dead 6 times, and then I woke up for 7th time, and I was dreaming sometimes, and I was out of body, and I was seeing things,
Mark,
yeah.
when you say nearly dead, it's ADFAR 3, which means if there's kind of light in your eyes, your pupils don't blink.
Yeah.
And if they talk, you don't hear, you don't feel any, you know, if they pinch you, there's no movement in it. They're really expecting you in a very, very deep coma. And you're not expected to.
I really wasn't in the body, and I was nowhere at all for a bit. Talk about rest in peace. Nothing. And then suddenly, I'm dreaming. And I'm dreaming. I saw faces. And I was, in a way, brought back by all these faces. I couldn't recognize it, you know? But I knew they were the faces of people who had wished me well, or prayed for me. That I knew. And I knew that I was coming back to do a bit more talking. Now this is about the structure of numbers and, well, structures and numeration. And there is something called known as the Vedic square. And if you go just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., or it goes down there from the other way, 8, 7, etc. But if you go to the second one, it goes a different place, different way, and it makes a different structure as you follow those points on the circle. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 9. And then you get various other structures. And as a dowser, you can dowse for things that are fast, like that fellow over at that corner, quick stuff, or slow, etc. This is anyway. That's the Vedic square of the Hindu tradition. Now, this is just fundamental sacred geometry. You've got the Vesika, next one, and then you've got the beginning of the rhombus, and then you've got the octave, 1 to 2, just an octave. If you then have that one, you've got the fifth, da, dee, the beginning, the first notes of the what's it called? Last post, which is a fifth in terms of music. Okay, and then we're going to move on to the structure which you get of a square and the way that it makes the 5. Because, carry on, what happens if you take that circle, that bigger circle, from the corners of the square, you get the bigger circle, and you find it makes, you make smaller circles that way, and you begin to get the 5 point. And the 5 point is life, but we'll come to that. There's a structure with the 5 in the middle. And the next one is Homer. So, Homer Simpson. Now, this is about the way that music works in basically the same way. If you have the 12-note scale, you find that if you go 4 around, and then 3, and then 5, you get the tonic major. You do the next one, and you get the related minor. And again, it's 3, 4, 5 in terms of a circle. It's not the angles of a 3, 4, 5 triangle which makes a right angle. It's in terms of a circle of tones. And music and geometry gather together in various ways. And that's the subdominant major, and the next one is the subdominant minor, and the next one is the tonic minor. And I mean, this is the basis of all. I was a folk guitarist for many, many years, and this is the basis of harmony. These are the bases of harmony. And that one is the transition into the next key, which is the G key. That's the 3, 4, 5 triangle as an actual layout with a right angle in the corner. And that was one of the main things in my first book, certainly, the right angle. And of course, Um, in the middle there is, well, we've got Osiris, Isis, and Horus, their offspring. So from the male, the female, the offspring. And in the middle there is a figure called Seshat. She was the one of the principles. They weren't gods, they were principles. They were principles of geometry and of structure in the world and everything. And Seshat was the measurer. And actually, I was very interested to see this one when I first came across it, because actually she's pointing at a certain point, and she's got 36 up there, and it goes down to 72. And those are the fundamental numbers of all sacred geometry. Okay, and then I've got the Tetractys. I called it the philosophical abacus of Pythagoras. And from the Tetractys, you can develop tones, you can develop structures, etc. Let's move on. Bernard of Clairvaux, who started really the Cistercian tradition, said all we need is proportion. And it's about the tonality of proportion. In the beginning was the word, the utterance, whatever the Big Bang was, in the beginning of whatever. And if we concordance is harmonic. And we were up in Delphi once, Nora and I, and I was standing down on the orchestra, as it's called. That's down there. And Nora was up there, and I was able to whisper, and it was completely clear what I whispered. Those bowl shapes, the bowl shapes of the ancient Epidurus and all these places where they had the plays and stuff, they were, it's sort of, when it concordance, everybody could hear. This is sound in the other elements. The top one on the left is sound in air. It's acoustic. It's a bullet, actually. It's a bullet going along. And of course, it breaks the sound barrier at some point if it's very fast.
You put the colour of the definition just to...
Yes, I put this together. The second one is sound in fire. It's a flame, and it makes a structure, acoustic structure within the flame itself. That's the Chladni diagram, where you have some sand on a tray, and you vibrate the tray, and you get these various diagrams, Chladni diagrams. The other one, or all those 6, they're one drop of water, just one drop of water, vibrating. There's something called the Schlieren technique. The Schlieren technique is when you have a tiny little focus pulls up through water, for instance. And you've got one drop of water, and you bring the focus up and up in tiny little bits, and you find there's sort of many little mandalas inside the vibrations in the water. So and of course the spin. Everything in the universe spins. As far as we know, everything. Right from the atoms, right up to heaven. And so that's a dervish doing his dance. But this is from stuff that was done in the late medieval and into the times of the Enlightenment, as they were called. I like this God's hand tuning, tuning up the place. But anyway, it's so it just be right. Now this is the famous. It's usually known as the School of Athens. Actually, it's not the name of it. Above that in the papal apartments where this exists, it has above it, it says Cognitio Causarum, which means the knowledge of causes, which is a phrase from Cicero, the knowledge of causes. Cognitio Causarum, the knowledge of causes. And all the guys there, you've got Pythagoras down here, and you've got Zoroaster over there, and you've got lots of other people. Angelo there, Simonides down there, and you've got Plato and Aristotle, and the whole lot of them. And these are, and it was called the knowledge of causes, this picture. And that was the actual name of it. And all these guys, all these scientists, knowledge of causes, trying to figure out how do things happen in this universe. And I've left one or two out. I should have before, but this is helping these guys. Well, this is what we've figured out in terms of the elements and the history of the universe, but it turns out probably we're wrong about that. The 3-degree hum in the universe, they say, oh, that must show that there was a big bang. Well, maybe, but it has a whole history there, and it shows. In the end, you've got the finger right at the end, the human being coming there. But when you look at this next one, this is our problem. 73% dark energy, 23% dark matter. Intergalactic gas, and planets and suns, etc. So we don't really know very much. And a lot of people feel as though we've sorted everything out. We don't know really anything about it. Dark energy, what is it? Dark matter. I've got a theory that dark energy is the potential of the universe, and dark matter is the stuff that's already happened. Well, I don't know, the past. But that's just, that's a reflection. But it's not, But this little sliver in this pie chart is tiny. We really don't know. And what about things like coincidences, synchronicities, all these strange things? You go out of your body sometimes. And what's going on? the universe is much stranger than official science really knows. I remember a friend of mine, Tony Edwards. He was at school with me. He was a youngster. I was at school, but, and he went he became the head Horizon producer, and he was working in America in not Princeton, it was with Stanford University down in Berkeley, and it was with a guy called John, a physicist, and they were studying precognition, and could people, they had these rhyme cards, you know, the 5 cards, the 9 cards, and could people sort of put their mind forward what would be the next card, and they found that 62% of people could. And when Tony came back to Britain, he got sacked. The BBC sacked him at the say-so of a man called Lewis Walcott. He was probably dead by Walcott, he's probably dead by now. But because the BBC is protecting the materialist paradigm completely, and you're not allowed to break that paradigm. But what's happened, of course, it is being eroded by the studies of physicists themselves. I mean, there's a guy who is thought that he might get the Nobel Prize. He's found in the strings, you know, the string theory. He's found awareness in the strings. The whole universe is aware, of course. Anyway, so let's move on. But the structure of our genes, the 10 point there is looking down into the genes. But this is the structure of the spiral of the genes, and it's all 5s and 6s. The geometry of the genes is 5s and 6s. There's things like adenine and cytosine and all these things, but basically it's all 5s and 6s. The geometry of our life is in our genes has that structure. Now, this is deliberate. This is a photograph by Cynthia Fire, the wife of Graham Hancock, and they went around the world. They did 4,000 dives, actually more, 4,000 and a half dives around the world, and they found stuff that was up on the land before the ice melted. And so that was the ice age, and then the melt, and the sea rose about, well, various parts of the world because of the world's movements. But some of it was 40 feet, some the stuff was a couple of 100 feet down, and they found stuff like this. So that means there's a whole civilization that could do stuff like that. So that's, I think that's Graham down there. And Sampa took the picture. But there's lots of pictures in a book called Underworld about what was found under the sea, and in India also, and in the Bimini Atoll and various places There are strange structures. There's this pyramid down there, like the Balkan pyramid, has been discovered. Various things. Okay. But our tuner to the quantum field, part of it anyway, is this thing. It's our brain, and this is where we tune. So, this is like various observations of my own, and we're near the end of it. The dynamic logic, whereby all effects have causes, and all processes have results, whereby any phenomena emerge at all, whereby thought has continuity, whereby the mind follows ideas to conclusions, whereby memory connects sequential experience, whereby all human creativity has always been mobilized. All this, in terms of the psyche, is called purpose. Consciousness is the universe awake to itself. Reality is teleological. In other words, it's closed. Okay, and then the next one. All this skeptical people say, oh, there's no purpose, it's just a fluke. No. Purpose has nothing to do with an angry old man, nor for that matter, a benevolent one in the sky. That's just one. And then so we go to the last one. Tuning to the quantum field, tuning to the phase state. Remember, be here now. Remember, be everywhere, always. The Big Bang is still happening. Contemplation is awareness as union. Humanity is the conscious presence of the primordial light. We call this, it's a yantra, a very simple picture. And the black around it, we call the shadow of the creator, because, that's as far as one can go, the shadow of the creator. And then you've got the white. The shadow of the creator manifests in the creation, the light, as consciousness. And that is a yantra, and we do that. The shadow of the creator manifests in the creation as consciousness. And that's yes. And that's my sound recognition. So that's it. That's what I have to say. Cheers.
That was lovely. Has anyone got any questions for Malcolm?
Malcolm, you said something I thought was very interesting at the beginning when you were talking about your out-of-body experience.
Yes.
And you said some interesting things, and then you didn't deal with any of them in your talk. I don't want it to go away from the talk because there's lots to think about there. But I'd be glad if you would explain what it was you were referring to in your out-of-body experience.
Well, at first actually, in my first recollection, I was having a fit. I was lying on the floor having a fit. And then a friend of mine came, my sister-in-law shouted, and I was in my brother's house in Edinburgh, and then this friend of mine came down to the basement place in my brother's house in Edinburgh, and wrestled me into a safe position. And then I was nowhere for a bit. And then I was in the ambulance for a little. just that direction. And then I was Nora. And then I was in the ward. And I did remember, and Nora will know about this, that immediately I started waking up, I fancied one of the nurses. It's very important to get the fuel going again. And but anyway, and a lot of the time I was in coma, but every now and again I would be dreaming, and sometimes I was turning up in people's dreams and telling people that I was going to be okay, but I don't remember doing that. But apparently that happened to various people. And we had one friend who says, no, you turned up in my dream and you said, I'm off. I'm off now. But anyway, so various strange things happen. But one of the things that I think the first actually cogent thought was what woke me up. Because I was nowhere and suddenly I was here again. And it was like, well, what woke me up? And then I was dreaming. I could see all these faces of people, and I don't know whose faces they were, but I knew that they were, they had intended well, and that in a way attracted me back, knowing lots of people. Later I learned that 40 million Muslims as well as many people in the Eureka School, which is a school of consciousness but by both nuns, who will be ways of love, people and stuff. And so intention, prayer, contemplation, whatever, these things are very powerful. And that's why I'm interested in sonics, because once you're on the body, when you're in the body, you've got sound. When you've got no body, there's no sound. It was very interesting because our old teacher, Oscar Chazo, of the Eureka School, he talks about lights upon silence. And I was seeing, I had light, but it was completely silent. When you don't have a body, you don't get the sound. And I'm very interested in that. In the beginning was the word thing. And that's very interesting. The utterance, the sound. And so when you're not in the body, so far as I know, or in my case, it was completely silent.
Two things. One, you showed us briefly the Egyptian deities, the statues, and you said that they were not entities or something.
I think they weren't really gods.
Yeah.
They were principles. The male principle, the female principle, the birth, the child, etc. These are the principles of human life.
And you mentioned waves through forms, or waves of forms.
Yes, waveforms really interest me now, and I haven't studied them well enough yet. There's a very good book called Sensitive Chaos. It was a Steiner book. It was a Rudolf Steiner book, Sensitive Chaos, and you can see in it lots of waveforms, and I'm very interested in that because I've not studied that properly.
What I was referring to was, it's mostly in France, it's Frenchmen, that say you have the arms, say the Greek arms of the statues go like that, or something,
Yeah.
there was actually a discrete energy that would come from them, which is what they were meant to represent.
These mudras have a particular power. The hands and the positions, etc. And of course, as a priest, I would be saying Mass, and sometimes my hands would be like that, sometimes like this, sometimes, etc. And there's a mudras, and it's a dance. It's a dance of mudras. And I mean, I was never I couldn't do the sex thing for priests. I mean, I wanted a girlfriend and I got one as quick as possible after I got ordained. But I was very interested in the esoteric aspect of mudras and gestures, etc., and of course of the voice itself. And I was a singer and I played guitar and BBC.
Turning and overturning.
Doing that too is great fun. And we used to use, we used to call it Rams in the calf. Ram, right down. And then in the heart, and then in the path, as we call it, and you can go up, and you start overtoning. Yeah. And especially if you're with a gang of others, and you get, the whole place gets concord there. Yeah.
Well, what happened to me once, actually, some of the temples, a lot of the temples are built to reflect the human voice.
Yes.
And there's one in St. Catherine's Chapel, which is about 30 miles away, in Wayne by Aylesbury. And I've been there with somebody, and he was telling me it was like a transistor. I went there with, it just happened to be the day they had classical music there. I can't do it, but I showed to these classical guys, I went, as I went down, as I was struck the point, the whole temple went, boom, and all these classical musicians went, what was that? What was that?
Yes.
They knew what they heard.
Once you get the actual tone of the place.
Yeah.
Well, my teacher of sacred geometry, Keith Critchlow, who was also the teacher of sacred geometry to the Prince, he went with his friend Alan Hacker, the clarinetist, and they went to the Sonic Centre. They went around big cathedrals and stuff, and when they got to the Sonic Centre, the place that really is the centre, they found that the sound, which was a single line of the flute or whatever it was, came back as polyphony. Multi-sounds. Very interesting. Yeah.
Everything has a purpose. You lost a lot on that day that you actually were taken away for a short while. What did you gain? What was how have you learned as a result, and how have you changed as a person to the benefit?
I do feel that I've been born again in some sort of weird feeling of I'm much more happy. I'm just happy because I'm not frightened of death, because it doesn't happen. Death doesn't really exist. It's a transition of some kind. I found myself looking down this is one of the experiences. I was sort of looking down. It wasn't, well, it was my eye, but it wasn't my eye. It was like an eternal eye looking down at this swirling river of souls, I thought. human percussion, all the thoughts and feelings and everything. And it was swirling, sometimes flow, and it was golden, and in this darkness, and I don't know what to call that sort of experience, really. I mean, various people have names, they call them the divine cola and stuff like that, but I didn't feel divine, I was just looking at what I could see.
You didn't cross it though, did you?
I came back.
Yeah. So, I mean, you described what the Greeks would have called the river Styx,
Yes.
and you don't come back from that when you go across it, do you?
Well, they save it.
Not in the present body, anyway.
No, and also in the Sufi work, the fire in the garden says the same thing. You go in the end to the lotus tree of the furthest limit, where all memories are reabsorbed into the divine. But I am in there.
If you go back to your talk, you were saying how the good thoughts of other people
Yeah.
helped you. That's very encouraging, but what about bad thoughts? If good thoughts can have a beneficial effect, what
Well,
about bad
cursing.
thoughts?
Trying to curse people, and you can do it just with actions, you blow them up. I don't know, I mean, the human race is still learning its adolescent lessons, and it's still killing itself. And what can one say? The dark side of the force. That's what I know, but I know that the good intentions, that old cynical saying,
The
"What road to hell is paved with good intentions," rubbish. It's good intentions is really powerful, really powerful. I know that because I was buoyed up in some way.
Hitler thought he had good intentions.
Well,
Waves of love, man. Can we go into it?
what?
The waves of love.
Yeah, can we do all that?
Because I think we did this. This is an exercise that is a different. Please take over. This is something that happened a lot. When Malcolm had his stroke, we have this ritual in the Rika school, which is a school of consciousness by Oscar Richards, and we have this ritual which is like a compression in time, a ritual to, we call it waves of love, but it's
I want to say something about the
transmitting
compression of time. The point of a ritual is to compress time. All the associations with something, you make a ritual to compress the time to a short time, but it's so that's the idea of a ritual. We call it that, compression of time, not trying to do just. So.
But so, when I was at the airport, because I was down here when Malcolm had a stroke up in Edinburgh where the publisher was, and I was at the airport and I was phoning various people, and I phoned this friend of ours, Brian, and he said, it's all right, it's already happening, we're getting people doing waves of love all over the place within our school. And so I phoned to say, can we get this going? And there was masses of this, and it's, so at the end of the talk that we gave a couple of weeks ago in Sussex, with Sussex Thousands, they asked us to do this. So we just did a short one. So instead of doing a long thing which takes about a quarter of an hour, we did something which takes about 10 minutes at the max. If you want to, we can do that. And it's quite thick, and it's not a religious thing, but I'll go through the indications first. except it isn't, you know, it is in a way.
It's spiritual.
It's
but
spiritual
not
work.
religious.
Okay. I'll go through the indications and then we'll do it, and we'll do it quite quickly. We'll start with an act of self-recollection, which is an Om salutation, recognizing the essence in us. And it's quite a simple one, and many of you know it, and it's like this. You bring your hands, we can do it together, and then we'll do it. This is just a practice. But you bring your hands together, and then palms in front of your heart, and then it's a quick O and a long M, and your forehead drops to the middle of your fingers in front of your heart.
And it's called an act of self-recollection.
Okay? And then, so we'll do that to start, and we'll do that to end. And then we'll call the energy. And we'll call the energy, bring our right hand up, and we'll say the words barakath, or barakah in the Sufi tradition, whatever works for you. We say calf because we want to get ourselves grounded in the calf, the off, and the heart, to get it down here. So it's like this, bara, and you feel the energy transfer into your left hand, calf, and you feel it going down into the ground. And we'll do that 3 times. We usually do it 12 times. So and then we'll do a repetition, remembering in our heart, and then imagining it receiving the energy in the people we imagine in his heart. And what we did at the Sussex Dowsers was we imagined that because you can generate a wave of blood for a specific thing or group, and we just did it for the energy of the group of the Sussex Dowsers. So we could do that for the. This is not the Dorset Dowsers, this is something else.
Dorset Earth Mysteries.
For the Dorset Earth Mysteries group. So we could do it for that. And then when we finished the whole thing, we just, in silence, just spend a few minutes, just anybody who you know who needs some energy, we just imagine them in your heart and then imagining them receiving it. The first of all, we'll repeat, all is free 12 times, imagining a sense of freedom and the Earth Energy Mystery Group in our heart. And imagining everybody receiving energy. And remembering them in our heart, imagining them receiving it in their hearts. So always remembering in your heart, receiving in the people's hearts. Okay? So it's all is free. We do 12 times, and in silence, well, you're imagining them receiving it. All is free, all is secure. 12 times, imagining this group in our hearts, and remembering them in our hearts, imagining them receiving. All is free, all is secure, all is free, all is love. All is awareness, all is light, all is transcendence, and then we repeat, we are one. And then we'll go in silence, and then we'll do an act of self-recollection. Is that clear? Clear enough. Okay, so it's just relaxed and easy, and we're just working with this group. Okay, we start with an act of self-recollection. Om. Bring your right hand up. All is, we stay together. All is free, 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 all is free. Stop. Imagining everybody receiving a wave of freedom in their hearts. meaning everybody out loud. All is secure. 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 All is love. 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 All is aware. 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 All is light. 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 All is transcendence. 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 All is we are one. 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 Imagine anybody you meet, you know, who needs waves of love in your heart, and remember them in your heart. Then imagine them receiving the waves of love in their hearts. Active self-reflection.
Well, we don't clap after that, otherwise we'll break the energy here. Ooh. It's the second one I've had today. I'm rather on today now. It's lovely. We've got a lovely refreshment now.